Hi, so today I'm going to do a quick demo of some of the new features for the AeroGear Mobile Android Studio plugin. What I want to demo is deploying a mobile service to an OpenShift cluster and then show how the plugin allows the user to automatically set and update the SDK config, which is the configuration needed by the client SDKs to interact with that deployed service. So for this demo I have my Android Studio running with the AeroGear Mobile plugin installed, which can be accessed from the Tools menu. I also have an OpenShift cluster running which has the AeroGear Mobile CLI installed as a plugin. So I have a new project created in Studio for my Android app, and I've created a new mobile app representation of this on my cluster. And I have associated this project with that mobile app representation, and this can be seen here in the .aerogear.json file, which within the project which stores the mobile client resource details. So with these things set up, I can now deploy a mobile service and get the SDK config that enables my app to connect to that deployed mobile service. So let's deploy a service. And let's deploy the AeroGear Identity Management Service keycloak. Okay, we can jump to our cluster and we can see that our keycloak instance is being provisioned. So this service will take some time to deploy, so we'll just jump forward to that point and continue the demo from there. Okay, so our service has finally deployed successfully, and we can see that our pods have been created and keycloak is running. So once the service is actually being deployed, we will receive a notification within Android Studio indicating that we can now set our SDK config. So to take advantage of the SDK config management features, we first need to configure the SDK config path. So this is the setting that points to our config file, which we can view underneath our plugin settings in the settings menu here. So underneath AeroGear Mobile, we have our SDK config path setting. So based on whether we have our config path specified or not, the notification will have options to either create the config file. If the config file is actually in the repo but hasn't been set for this IDE instance, then we give a link to the SDK config path setting that I've just shown you, and you can just set the configuration there. And we also have the option to just straight update the SDK config if both those settings are set. So in this instance, let's create the config file. So let's set our destination folder and create our file. So this will create our SDK config file and add our SDK config to the file. Cool. Once this is done, we can then just straight update our config with one click. Cool. And our setting is now set. So that is the current workflow for our SDK config management. This workflow included creating the SDK config file, but for future deployments, once the SDK config path is set, it should be just one click to update the config. And we can also view our config at any time from underneath the options in our Tools menu. Okay, so that was our demo of SDK config management. Thanks for watching.